In 1992, various nations from across the world got together at the Rio Earth Summit to discuss issues of environmental importance and biodiversity. Out of these discussions came the United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity, and in 1993, Australia became a signatory. Around that time, Australia was beefing up and revamping its legislation around environmental protection, and in 1992, they introduced the Endangered Species Protection Act. This was a first attempt to start to classify and list all of the animals native to Australia that were threatened by extinction. The ESP Act of 1992 was then superseded in the year 2000 by the Commonwealth Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act. This refined the process of classifying species that were at threat of extinction, and they used 6 categories that we are familiar with today. They would be extinct, extinct in the wild, critically endangered, endangered, vulnerable, and conservationally dependent. Both of these acts were designed to meet our obligations under the new United Nations Convention of Biological Diversity. And as such, one of their functions is to guide the rehabilitation of species that face the threat of extinction. Traditionally, this has been accomplished using single species recovery plans. However, their effectiveness has been called into question due to their costs, monitoring difficulties, and a bias that seems to be occurring in the selection of species to which conservation resources are allocated. Researchers such as Metrick and Weitzman in 1996 identified that there was a bias when it came to the allocation of conservation resources, and that mammals and birds, certain taxonomic groups, were favoured, and this tended to be correlated with the size of the animal's body as well. Following researchers such as Clem Tisdale and their associates found that there were also social and economic preferences that influence the allocation of these conservation resources. So what if there's a bias? As long as some of the species are getting protected, right? Well, Madeline Bottrell out of the University of Queensland might not agree with you. Her associates and her did a study in 2011 that showed there was actually no difference whether a species had a recovery plan in place or didn't. In response to Martin Taylor and his colleagues' 2005 paper that concluded that having a recovery plan in place does reduce the species' chance of extinction, Madeline Bottrell and hers were not satisfied that their study had taken into account all of the biases that we've identified here. As such, they created a matching system, putting together species with and without recovery plans that fit together onto that biased system. What they found was there is no difference at all. No statistical significant difference between having a recovery plan in place and improving your conservation status and not. And if there is no difference, and it's costing money and time and taking valuable resources away from other efforts, what's the point? Well, according to Taylor and his colleagues, at least something is getting done. And to earlier researchers' points like Moore and Wooler from 2004, recovery planning can be a very useful tool at narrowing and focusing resources on species that are right at the brink of extinction and helping bring them back. The burning question is whether or not this is the best allocation of our resources, or if we should be taking a broader approach, as was suggested by Minister Garrett when he spoke about taking a landscape-based focus in our future conservation efforts. The issue, as identified by Bottrell and her colleagues, is that we simply lack the data to be able to fully assess and monitor whether or not these plans are doing what we say and what we want them to do. And without that, we just can't make informed decisions as to which way to go. And recovery plans take ages. They take a long time to set up, they take a long time to get approved, they take a long time to implement, they take a long time before you start to see results, and for a single species, that's a really heavy investment. So what to do next? Well, I agree with the Minister's comments from 2009. If the goal of recovery planning is to arrest extinction, and if our obligations under the UNCBD is to maximise biodiversity, it only makes sense to take what little resources we have and to allocate them out as much as we can, expand them over as many taxa as possible in either an ecosystem or a landscape-based approach. Additionally, we need to innovate with new ideas and greater steps towards reconciliation ecology. Incorporating the natural world into our ever-increasing urban landscape may reduce the need for recovery planning in the future, as our vulnerable native species adapt to the spaces we create for them. I'd just like to thank all the authors that were mentioned in this video, as well as Pexels.com for supplying all the stock footage, including their content creators Cristo Parento, Pat Wellen, Lampus Productions, Pixabay, Shah Jahar, and Eclipse Studios. Thank you for your work, guys. Couldn't have done it without you. And OpenShot Video Editor for making all this possible. Thank you to the staff at UWA as well. I'll catch you next time. Thank you.